series where we cover the entire Bible in 20 months. Well, today's chapters are Psalm 54 and 55. Both these psalms are written by David fighting for his life. Now, woven into the narrative is an understanding of military regiments and David running from Saul and Saul's army. And so I'm sitting here in Vryheid, which is in a hotel, one of the battlefield hotels. This area, for those of you who are not familiar with KwaZulu-Natal, has a long history. If you look into its history, if you go and visit these villages, there's monuments of wars. This is a perfect setting to deal with David's problem. So the issue in Psalm 54 is that the Ziphites had gone to Saul and said, "Is not David hiding among us?" Now they say that twice. If you go back into the book of Samuel, they twice go to Saul and say, "We found David. He's hiding among us. Send your army out to take him. We want to give him up to you." So they were Saul loyalists. Remember, Saul was king. David was anointed king, but Saul had it in for him. So in both these instances, David manages to escape. The first time his blood brother, Saul's son, Jonathan, comes to him and makes covenant there in Ziph and says to him, "Listen, you're going to be okay. My dad's coming, but get out of here." And the other time, David pushes deeper into the desert. So Ziph was like in the southern part of Judah. Later time in Israel, it became like a border town. It became a barrier of defense against Jerusalem. But David says, "Surely God is my help. The Lord is the one who sustains me." Like running for his life. It's a very short psalm, but you see David's burst to God say, as he's running out of Ziph, "God help me, I'm in your hands." Now Psalm 55 is a little bit more complicated than that. It's about betrayal. Look at verse 12 says, "If an enemy were insulting me, I could endure it. If a foe were rising up against me, I could hide. But it is you, a man like myself, my companion, my close friend, with whom I once enjoyed sweet fellowship at the house of God as we walked among the worshippers." So someone very close to David turned on him. Some people think this was Absalom's rebellion, and it's certainly he's not calling down death and curses on Absalom because he didn't even want Absalom touched. But Absalom had an advisor, Ahithophel, and some say it was him. But most say not. Probably someone else betrayed David, as not recorded in other books of the Bible. So, but whatever it is, David's betrayed. Have you ever been betrayed? Maybe a spouse had an affair. Maybe a parent left you. Maybe a good friend said something really bad against you. Maybe someone who was in business with you took the money and ran. If you haven't been betrayed in your life, maybe you haven't let people in really close. Because betrayal happens when you let people really close. You give them your heart, and then they turn on you. Now, if it's happened to you, someone's left you, someone said horrible things about you, you can identify with what David's saying here. And I'm going to go through the outline of what he says. Some of it is just really raw, and it's really comforting to look at it and say, actually, this is a really good man. This is a man after the heart of God, and he feels these things that you might have felt. 1 to 3 describes his misery. 4 to 8 describes his fear. "My thoughts trouble me, I'm distraught. My heart is in anguish within me, and the terrors of death have fallen on me." That's what he says. Terrified. I remember talking to you earlier in this devotional series about leadership being the art of disguising terror. It amazes me about David. David in his Psalms reflects his fear, the anguish, the emotion of what he goes through. But his men aren't dragged through that, are they? Because he manages still to lead them. Verse 9 to 11, the fury of David. When someone's betrayed you, that thing's natural. 12 to 14, the bitterness of a friend's betrayal as he reflects on it. Verse 15, asking God to deal with it. Verse 16 to 19, finding rest in God. So your emotions will go up and down. Of course they will when you're betrayed by someone really close. But he's finding his rest in God, those verses of 16 to 19. And then he describes the treachery. So you think, I'm going to deal with it. No, the problem with betrayal, it comes back and revisits you. And that's why Jesus said we've got to forgive again and again and again. And you can see he's thinking about it. And he says in verse 20, his talk is as smooth as butter, yet war is in his heart. He says, I should have seen it. I should have seen it. I shouldn't have just listened to your words. They were sweet as butter, but there was war inside your heart. I didn't even see it. And then verse 22, he leaves the matter in God's hands. Cast your cares on the Lord, and he will sustain you. He will never let the righteous be shaken. If you've been betrayed, it's natural to get hyped up about it. But the right place to take it is to the Lord. They don't go and air it with everybody else. Take it to the Lord. Now, obviously, if you've got close confidants, you can say to them, help me deal with this. But in essence, the lesson we learned from David, you can entrust your heart, your betrayed heart, to the Lord Jesus Christ.